There is also way too much focus on the LGBTQ community by the fandom in a negative manner, and it just needs to go away, I think, for a healthy story to grow, and for Riri to really share her limelight with fans.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
And so in this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
See, it deserves your attention. Ironheart deserves your attention. That's how I knew. I was like, oh, they are desperate to get people to watch this show. But after I did my reaction, I kept getting, hey, it wasn't that bad. I just watched it. Hey, I just watched the first 3 episodes. It wasn't that bad.
Ironheart might be one of the worst executed ideas ever in the MCU, because under all that garbage was actually potential.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark. It's like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through and he's like, who is that? And she's like, I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark. And he's like, I like that girl. And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Ironheart is back, this time going to an uncomfortable place for viewers.
Ironheart is the biggest L of Marvel of all time. The reactions are just spectacular. Supposedly smarter than Tony Stark, bites an electric wire, sells her soul to gain magic powers, uses new powers to steal. What did the writers mean by this? Smoke detector beeps.
I can understand why she's frustrated. That's how I feel watching her interviews.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should be.
Ironheart is practically unwatchable.
This show basically keyed their car, their mom, and in their bowl of cereal in the morning.
What happens when a billion-dollar studio forgets how to tell stories? You get Ironheart, a show so drenched in marketing buzzwords, corporate panic, and shallow messaging that it practically screams forced relevance from the opening scene. It's not just a flop, it's a case study, a golden example on how a once golden franchise lost the very thing that made audiences care in the first place, heart.
Ironheart is practically unwatchable. Toot toot, Jerry laughs. Yes, there is an alphabet character. They admit Ironheart sucks, but look, they're getting ready to blame you for it because Ironheart fulfills low expectations with weak narrative, poorly written characters, and dull action.
Now, this isn't about hating new characters. It's not about gatekeeping legacy. This is about the moment the Marvel Cinematic Universe stopped telling stories and started checking boxes. Because Ironheart wasn't born out of demand or passion or character evolution. She was born in a boardroom. The goal wasn't to build a new icon. The goal was to chase a headline. And that, right there, is where things started going wrong.
Does it defy the haters? Or is it another skippable series? It's always about you, right? It's always about the audience. It's amazing. It doesn't matter if it's the 2024 election or whether it's a Disney streaming product. It's always about like how evil is the actual voters? How evil are the audience?
Marvel fans used to be hyped for everything. Now they're cautious, skeptical, burned too many times by shows that look shiny on the outside but are hollow inside. And Ironheart? It's not just another misfire, it's the loudest warning sign yet that Marvel's magic is fading fast. So how did we get here? How did we go from Tony Stark building a suit in a cave to Riri Williams reverse engineering his legacy in her dorm room with barely any buildup and even less emotional connection? Why is it that every time fans express criticism, they're met with accusations of hate instead of reflection? And maybe the biggest question of all, what does this say about the future of Marvel? This isn't just a takedown, it's a dissection. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear goes deeper than just bad writing or a flopped series. This is the anatomy of a story that never had a soul to begin with.
She has to really reckon with what that means for the life that she wants to lead.
It's very short-lived. It's brushed over really quickly, and she kind of reverts back to her old self.
But one thing is for certain about this series is that old agendas aside, let's be very real about this. There's a lack of character development. The directing, the producing, the writing is just way off. It makes no sense at all, and it's very lackluster. There's no depth to it all.
Before Ironheart ever hit a screen, she was already controversial, and not because of who she was, but how she was created. Riri Williams was introduced during Marvel Comics' infamous legacy replacement era, a time when beloved characters were being rapidly swapped out for newer, more diverse versions. Sam Wilson became Captain America. Jane Foster took Thor's hammer. Amadeus Cho became the Hulk. And in the middle of that push came Riri, just 15 years old, a genius, and suddenly the new Iron Man. On paper, it sounds bold, ambitious, fresh, but the execution? It was the storytelling equivalent of a microwave dinner, rushed, underdeveloped, and served cold. Unlike Peter Parker or even Kamala Khan, characters built slowly over time, with clear arcs and fan investment. Riri was dropped in with no buildup and no real emotional stakes. One day she's reverse engineering StarTech in her dorm room, and the next, boom, instant Avenger material. It wasn't that fans couldn't accept a young black woman taking up the mantle. It's that she didn't earn it. And that's a crucial distinction Marvel never seemed to understand. Where was her growth? Her struggle? Her heart? Instead, the character felt like a product, built for press releases, not people. Headlines praised the representation, but readers didn't show up. Her comic run was short-lived, not because of roasts, not because of some conspiracy, but because no one was buying it. The interest just wasn't there. And rather than reflect on why, Marvel doubled down. They didn't go back to the drawing board, they went to the casting room. When Riri finally made her big screen debut, it wasn't in her own show or a grounded origin story. Nope, Marvel skipped all that and dropped her straight into Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, a film already overstuffed with grief, social mass sieges, and its own heavy expectations. And in the middle of all that emotion, here comes Riri Williams, cracking jokes and building iron suits like it's an after-school project. The result? Confusion. Who was she? Why was she here? Was this the new Iron Man or just comic relief? There was no time for audiences to connect with her. No backstory, no stakes, no explanation for why this 19-year-old was suddenly a central piece of a film about Wakandan grief and legacy. It felt like a shortcut, like Marvel didn't trust us enough to grow with her. They just assumed we'd cheer because she was important. It's the same problem that's haunted the character from day one. She's not allowed to fail. She doesn't have flaws. She's smart because the script says so. She's brave because the plot needs her to be. There's no emotional texture, no vulnerability, just a constant insistence that she matters without showing us why. Compare that to Tony Stark, who was arrogant, selfish, traumatized, and that's why we loved him. He earned our respect over years, through pain, through sacrifice. Riri? She skips the grind entirely. And when audiences didn't immediately embrace her, Marvel didn't ask what went wrong. They blamed the fans. If you didn't like Ironheart, it wasn't the writing. It was you. You were against color. You were against women. You were fragile. That BS deflection? It didn't shield the show. It just made things worse. Because now, instead of growing into a fan favorite, Riri became a symbol, not of empowerment, but of Marvel's growing disconnect from its audience. And that disconnect was only just beginning. After her debut in Wakanda Forever, Riri Williams was fast-tracked into her own Disney Plus series. No build-up, no demand, just here it is. But here's the problem, nobody was asking for it. There wasn't a grassroots movement begging for an Ironheart spin-off. There wasn't a wave of fan petitions or trending hashtags calling for more Riri. There was just Marvel deciding on its own that this character needed to headline a series, and assuming the audience would show up. They didn't. From the beginning, the show's rollout felt less like a celebration and more like a corporate checklist. Press releases were filled with buzzwords. Trailers focused on identity, not story. And every piece of marketing screamed the same thing. Look at how important this show is. But importance doesn't sell a series. Emotion does. Connection, curiosity, conflict. And Ironheart had none of that. Instead of earning our investment, the show tried to manufacture it. Riri was positioned as the new face of a franchise, without ever proving why she should be. And when early previews dropped and the reception was underwhelming, Marvel didn't pause to course correct. They doubled down. Rather than rework the character, rather than inject any real soul into the writing, they surrounded Riri with cardboard side characters, weak villains, and action scenes that felt more like filler than payoff. And here's the kicker. The entire series felt like it was written by people who'd never actually spoken to a Marvel fan. The pacing was off. The tone was inconsistent. The emotional stakes were practically non-existent. It was a show built to meet quotas, not to tell a story. But this wasn't just a misstep. It was a reveal. It showed us what happens when a studio treats storytelling like a science experiment, when character arcs are decided by spreadsheets, when creative passion takes a back seat to marketing strategies. Ironheart wasn't just another show. It was Marvel's warning sign, a blinking neon message that said, we don't know what you want anymore. And then came the moment that really broke the fan base. When the backlash started rolling in, Marvel didn't react with humility or introspection. They didn't say, maybe we missed the mark. They didn't ask fans, what didn't work for you? Instead, they went straight to the nuclear option, blame the audience. If you didn't like Ironheart, it wasn't because the story was weak, or the characters were flat, or the dialogue sounded like it was ripped from a Tumblr thread. No, it was because you were against women. You were fragile. You just couldn't handle a strong, young black woman in the spotlight. That's not just a lazy defense. It's a dangerous one, because it shuts down conversation. It turns legitimate feedback into something controversial, and it creates a world world where no criticism is allowed, only applause. But here's the truth Marvel didn't want to face. Most fans didn't care about Riri's race or gender. They cared about the writing. They cared about the craft. They cared that she was being shoved into legacy status without any effort to earn it. And when the show's lead actress, Dominique Thorne, was asked about the criticism, she didn't respond with openness or reflection. She leaned into the same scorched earth mentality. If you didn't like the show, it must be because of who she is, not how the role was written. That posture didn't just hurt Ironheart, it hurt every character like her. Because when diversity is used as a shield instead of a strength, it undermines everything it claims to stand for. It turns powerful representation into a defensive wall, and that wall shuts fans out. Audiences want real characters, not protected ones. They want heroes who grow, who struggle, not ones who are declared perfect from episode 1. By labeling all criticism as social problem, Marvel didn't protect Riri. They isolated her. They pushed her further from the people who might have cared. And worse, they framed their own audience as the enemy. That move backfired hard. And the damage wasn't just to Ironheart. It sent a message across the fandom. If you don't like what we make, you're the problem. And that message would come back to haunt them, especially when Desperation kicked in, and Marvel reached for their biggest, most bizarre Hail Mary yet. When the early reactions to Ironheart were lukewarm, or worse, Marvel did what any panicked studio would do when their story flops before the credits even roll. They hit the big red button. Enter Mephisto. Yes, that Mephisto. The demonic Marvel villain fans have been theorizing about since WandaVision. For years, fans have begged for this character to make his debut. And for years, Marvel teased it, danced around it, and pulled back. Until now. But here's the twist. Mephisto isn't showing up in Doctor Strange. Not in Blade, not in Moon Knight, not in any of the dark, mystical corners of the MCU where he actually fits. Nope, he's being dropped completely out of nowhere into Ironheart. Let that sink in. One of the most anticipated, ominous, fan-speculated villains in Marvel history, being rolled out to prop up a series that couldn't stand on its own. And they didn't just bring in Mephisto. They brought in Sacha Baron Cohen to play him. An A-list name, a wildcard actor, the kind of stunt casting that screams, please, please talk about this show again. This isn't fan service. This is fan bait. A last-ditch marketing move dressed up like a plot twist. And fans, they saw right through it. Because this wasn't a reveal that felt earned. There was no build-up, no mythology, no meaningful setup. It was a Hail Mary, a studio reaching deep into its bag of nostalgia tricks and pulling out the biggest name it hadn't burned yet. And it worked for about 5 minutes. The Mephisto news trended. People clicked. But then they remembered. This is still Ironheart. No amount of devilish charm, meme-worthy casting, or Twitter buzz could distract from the truth. The core story was still hollow. The writing was still bland. The characters were still undercooked. And Marvel's plan? Just sprinkle Mephisto on top like it's seasoning and pray the audience forgets the meat was bad underneath. But here's the thing. Fans aren't falling for it anymore. They've been burned too many times. Big reveals without big stories? That trick doesn't work now. And Marvel, more than ever, needs to realize that throwing diamonds into a dumpster doesn't make it treasure. And as wild as that move was, it wasn't the most baffling decision Marvel made with this show. That honor belongs to Velma. Just when you thought Marvel couldn't make Ironheart more tone-deaf, they decided to introduce a brand new character who feels like she was cloned from the worst performing animated show of the last decade. Her name? Velma. But let's be real, she might as well be called Velma 2.0. Snarky, smug, insufferable, and painfully familiar. From her tone to her one-liners to the way she constantly talks down to everyone around her, Velma brings the exact same energy that made HBO Max's Velma the internet's favorite punching bag. The only difference? This time, she's somehow even less justified in the story. It's like Marvel executives sat in a boardroom and said, hey, you know that universally hated character archetype from the show that flopped so hard it broke Rotten Tomatoes? Yeah, let's do that, but worse. There's no story reason for her to exist, no emotional weight, no purpose, except to tick another diversity box and inject another dose of performative sass into a show already suffocating under its own dialogue. Velma doesn't feel like a character. She feels like a content algorithm in human form, like she was designed for TikTok clips and Tumblr GIFs, not for fans who want to actually care about the people on screen. And the backlash? Immediate. Fans weren't upset because she was new or different, or even because she was loud. They were upset because she was lazy. A cut-and-paste copy of a failed formula, one that tried to use identity and sarcasm as substitutes for actual depth. But what's worse is what this decision revealed. It showed that Marvel has stopped learning from its mistakes. Instead of looking at Velma's crash and burn as a cautionary tale, they saw it as a template, a sign that outrage equals engagement, a belief that if enough people talk about how bad the character is, at least they're talking. And that kind of thinking, that's creative bankruptcy. Characters like Tony Stark or Steve Rogers or Wanda Maximoff worked because they had complexity, they had arcs, they had moments of failure, reset, triumph. They felt human. Velma feels like she was printed in a meme factory, and by dumping her into Ironheart, Marvel didn't just weaken the show. They sent a message to fans. We don't care if it's good, we just want you to watch out of spite. But guess what? Spite doesn't pay the bills, and disrespect doesn't build franchises. And the worst part? Even with all this chaos on screen, what was happening behind the scenes was somehow even more ridiculous. Here's a fun little test. When a Disney Plus show is a hit, how do you know? know? Easy. You don't have to wonder. They tell you loudly, constantly. Headlines, banners, social media blitzes, streaming charts. They'll post graphs, brag about watch hours, drop behind-the-scenes features, and push it in your face for weeks. Now try to find any of that for Ironheart. Go ahead. I'll wait. What you'll find instead is silence. No Nielsen rankings, no celebratory tweets, no top 10 trending badges, just vague mentions of viewer engagement and a PR machine that suddenly forgot how to brag. And that's not an accident. That's not humility. That's damage control. Because deep down, even Disney knows what happened here. They poured tens of millions into this show. Reshoots, CGI polish, influencer campaigns, YouTube ads, Twitter spaces, the whole machine. And still, people didn't show up. You can't hide failure like that. You can only try to talk around it. They know Ironheart isn't just underperforming. It's imploding, quietly, embarrassingly. And instead of being transparent about it, the studio's playing the oldest trick in the book. If we don't acknowledge the numbers, maybe nobody will notice they're bad. But we notice, because we remember how they handled WandaVision, Loki, Moon Knight, shows that had flaws, but also had heart. When those shows succeeded, Disney threw a party. When Ironheart landed with a thud, suddenly the lights went out. No charts, no press, just a hope that the noise would fade away before anyone asked too many questions. And the irony? Marvel could have learned from this. They could have stepped back and said, you know what, maybe the formula's not working anymore. But instead, they doubled down again. Because to admit failure would mean admitting something even worse, that the audience moved on, and Marvel didn't notice. And the man at the top, he's still acting like it's 2019. To understand just how far off the rails things have gone, we have to talk about the architect himself, Kevin Feige. This is the guy who built the most successful cinematic universe in Hollywood history. Endgame, Infinity War, a decade of payoff and precision. And now, this. Because while the audience evolved, Feige didn't. He still thinks slapping a Marvel logo on anything is enough to guarantee hype. He still thinks a flashy suit and a few one-liners are all it takes to launch a new icon. But that era is gone. Audiences are smarter now, more selective, more skeptical. They don't want another manufactured mascot. They want a story. Feige's vision for Riri Williams looked good on paper. A young, brilliant black woman stepping into Iron Man's legacy. On paper, that's bold. That's exciting. That could have been incredible. But in execution, it's everything wrong with modern Marvel. There's no arc, no struggle, no humility, just instant greatness, instant relevance, instant importance. Tony Stark was brilliant, sure, but he was also broken, selfish, self-destructive. We watched him grow through failure. We watched him earn redemption. Riri? She's smart because the script tells us she is. She's confident because that's what the plot demands. There's no journey, just a checklist. Feige forgot the one rule that made the MCU work. Legacy can't be assigned. It has to be earned. And what we're seeing now isn't just one bad show. It's a pattern. Characters introduced not out of story necessity, but out of obligation. Plots written not from the heart, but from the algorithm. Studios chasing trends, hashtags, and headlines while forgetting the very people who made them successful in the first place. Marvel used to build moments. Now it builds templates. And in the process, it's losing everything that made the franchise matter. Ironheart is just the most obvious casualty. A hollow shell wearing a legendary suit. So where does it go from here? Ironheart was supposed to be a torchbearer. Instead, she's become a warning flare. A reminder of what happens when you try to manufacture icons in a lab. When you put branding before character. When you treat your audience like an obstacle instead of a partner. And here's the truth. Fans didn't turn on Marvel because of diversity or progress. They turned away because the story stopped being good. Because no amount of representation can fix a broken script. No cameo can mask a soulless plot. And no amount of corporate spin can make us feel something that isn't there. Marvel once had the magic. Now it's chasing ghosts. And Ironheart? It's not the future of the MCU. It's the funeral for what it used to be. Because legacy can't be forced. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You have to build it from the ground up. With care, with depth, with heart. Until Marvel remembers that, the audience will keep walking away. So if you're tired of watching your favorite stories get replaced by scripts that sound like PowerPoint presentations, you're not alone. And if this breakdown hit home, hit that subscribe button because this isn't the end. It's just the beginning.